Rest in peace to a two-time American League All-Star and World Series champion who in his own way represented something that is unique about Major League Baseball.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com/LockedOnMLB for 50% off your first year. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube channel. I read all the comments. Yes, even the ones who say, unsubscribed. It's not an airport. You don't have to announce your departure. But hey, it is Sunday. It's late Sunday morning, early Sunday afternoon here in California. Some games have already started. The Mets and Yankees series is going to their final game, and right now, it's very early. The Yankees have an early lead. A couple of games have already gone on, but I want to take this time to pay tribute to a player who was a champion, an all-star, died way too young, and is, as I mentioned in the tease, kind of represents something about baseball that I think is unique. Bobby Jenks died at the age of 44. He was only 44 years old, and he was a two-time All-Star closer for the Chicago White Sox. He made his debut on the 5th of July, 2005. He made his big league debut after starting the season in Birmingham, playing for the Birmingham Barons. And he started in 2005 in July. And by the end, this call-up from the minor leagues was the pitcher on the mound with his arms up, getting the final out of the 2005 World Series, clinching a thrilling 1-0 game that clinched the World Series for the Chicago White Sox. Their first World Series title since 1917, the first one they won since the 1919 Black Sox scandal. It was Bobby Jenks giving the city of Chicago their first World Series title of any kind since 1917. And for White Sox fans who always had to hear about Cubs, for once they had the upper hand that they won a World Series first. And of all the great players and all the great Hall of Famers who have played for the Chicago White Sox over the years, including one of the great relief pitchers of all time, Hoyt Wilhelm, and another one of the great relief pitchers of all time, Rich Gossage, it was Bobby Jenks who didn't make his big league debut until that July, was the one who got the final out. Now, for most of the year, Dustin Hermanson, who was a fine pitcher for many years, was the White Sox closer, but he had some injury issues, and he had some ineffectiveness down the stretch. Bobby Jenks came in, and in basically half a season, 32 games, he got 6 saves. He struck out 50 batters in 39 and a third innings. He only walked 5 batters. He had a good ERA of 2.75. Now, you have to remember one thing about that White Sox team in 2005. That was a team that was very good up and down. They didn't have a ton of superstars on the team. They had a lot of very good players. Paul Konerko was on that team. Jermaine Dye was on that team. And they had a pitching staff that was incredibly deep. They had 4 pitchers throw complete games in the ALCS. It was Garcia, Burley, Contreras, and Garland. Very good rotation. None of them were Cy Young Award winners, just always a good starter. And they had the likes of Vizcaino, Marte, Hermanson, the aforementioned Bobby Jenks. They had El Duque Hernandez in the bullpen. They didn't have superstars. They just had depth. And they were, along with the 1999 Yankees, the only 2 teams to go through a postseason in the wild card era with only 1 loss. They swept the Red Sox. They beat the Angels in 5, and then they swept the Houston Astros, who back then were a National League team. And Bobby Jenks got to be the one who got the final out and the famous shot of him jumping up and down. But beyond that, beyond the fact that he was an unlikely player, starting the first few months of the season in the minor leagues and finishing it on the mound, he also was a redemption story. Because Bobby Jenks was someone who had the reputation of, well, not having his head in it. He was a member of the Angels organization, and he had alcohol problems, he had conditioning problems, he was out of shape, and the Angels gave up on him. They gave up on him. They said basically, you are a person who's not going to make it to the majors because you don't have the discipline to do it. It's a reminiscent of the line that Dean Wormer said to Flounder in Animal House, "Drunk, fat, and stupid is no way to go through life, son." That's basically what the Angels told him. And they cut him. And the White Sox gave him a chance. And with this came his redemption, to prove himself that the White Sox got a good player who just needed another chance. And he went from being cut at the end of 2004, saying you're not worthy of the Angels minor league system, to clinching a World Series for the Chicago White Sox. Now, he was always a big dude. In fact, when Ozzie Guillen would call him from the bullpen, he would signify to the right-hander and make a motion as if I'm calling for the big guy, like showing that he was pretty wide. He was a pretty wide guy. But as it turned out, he wound up playing pretty well. It wasn't just that 2005. He made the All-Star game a couple of times, and then he wound up pitching the White Sox back into the postseason in 2008 to show that that team and his run were not exactly a fluke. That team wound up losing in who did they lose to? They lost to, it was in 2008, so they lost to Tampa Bay. They lost to Tampa Bay, who went on to go to Game 5 of the World Series that year. But Jenks had a nice career. Now, he wound up playing for the notorious 2011 Boston Red Sox, and that's where he finished his career. And then he went on, and sadly, he developed a form of stomach cancer that took his life this year. And Bobby Jenks is probably going to go on to be one of those players that White Sox fans remember. But then as the years go by, will kind of fall into obscurity a little bit. There are a lot of players, the Bob Turleys of the world, the Bob Cazavas of the world, who are unlikely pitchers to clinch a World Series. Not all of them become legends. But Bobby Jenks had a life and a career worth remembering right now. Not only is he a reclamation project, not only was he someone who can show that baseball can be a redeeming game. They say you're too fat. They say you're too lazy. They say you have an alcohol problem. Well, you can prove yourself. And you can prove yourself in a way that no one can deny. And it also adds to the illusion of baseball that you don't have to be a perfect physical specimen. The greatest player of all time is arguably Babe Ruth, who for most of his career was a pretty muscular dude, but by the end, his belly got out of control. One of the best hitters I've ever seen play in my life was Tony Gwynn. Again, a fine athlete. He was a college basketball player. But midway through his career, he developed a paunch while compiling batting titles. That someone like Greg Maddux can look like your CPA and be the best pitcher of his generation. Or Fernando Valenzuela can just look like a dude from the neighborhood. Sloppy hair, bit of a belly, big old smile, and throwing that screwball and pitching the Dodgers to a World Series title. Bobby Jenks is one of those players. A young guy, a belly, a little out of control, having to deal with an alcohol problem, falls apart and can redeem himself. and redeem himself, because baseball is a meritocracy. At the end, it didn't matter what his past was. In the end, it didn't matter if he had issues with conditioning or if he had to conquer alcohol demons. He was on the mound. Orlando Palmeiro grounded out. Ground ball to Uribe, over to Canerco. White Sox won the World Series. And Bobby Jenks jumped as high as he could and eventually was in the bottom of a pile of happy White Sox players and White Sox fans who never thought they were going to see that moment. They did. So rest in peace, Bobby Jenks. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're building wealth. Now, I've had problems of too many subscriptions. You know that thing of, hey, subscribe for free for 1 month? Well, I forgot a couple of them. Monarch Money helped track them down. And for a big financial goal, like for me, going to Europe to visit my son, Monarch Money helped me put enough money aside so it could break my heart to see my son living far away, but not break my bank. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Now, as I'm recording this, the Red Sox are currently playing Washington, and the Red Sox currently have a lead. And I don't know what the end of the game is going to be, but they're going for a sweep. And the Red Sox bats have woken up, and Trevor Story seems to just hit home runs at will. And the Red Sox are in a very strange place right now. And let me explain what I mean by that. A few weeks ago, when the Red Sox decided to punt and trade Rafael Devers for a VHS copy of Superman 2 and a flat can of Sprite, it looked like they were giving up on the season, trying to save money to do a free agent shopping spree for next year. And when they dropped 7 out of their next 10 games, fell well below 500, fell out of a playoff spot and fell under 500, and looked like they couldn't hit a barn door with an oar, they looked dead from the neck up. And I thought for sure, okay, when July comes, put a for sale sign. If you're going to trade Rafael Devers, trade everyone else. If you're going to punt, punt. And I took a look and I saw, like, hey, they have Aroldis Chapman, one of my least favorite players in baseball. They have Lucas Giolito. They have a couple other players who are valuable, especially for teams who are looking for some sort of pitching depth in the rotation, in the outfield. And I thought, like, hell, if Alex Bregman's going to opt out when he comes off of the disabled list, injured list, sorry, you got to change the name of that, deal him too. If you're going to deal your marquee star, just flood your farm system with young players, because you already got the Myers and everyone else who are coming up with the big prospects. Just let's get that farm system flush full of players. Because if you're going to do this, do this. If you're going to dump players, dump players. And you have players, as I mentioned, like Giolito, like Chapman, that this is a seller's market. There are a lot of teams that are drooling to get into this playoff hunt, and you could probably get a better prospect than you normally would. And if the Red Sox are falling like a rock, let's go ahead and do that. Well, the Red Sox haven't exactly been playing like world beaters. However, they play in the American League. The American League is weird. Look what just happened. The Yankees went from 7 games up to 3 games back in about a minute. The Toronto Blue Jays went from, oh my God, they got to fire their manager and maybe start dumping players, to, oh my God, they have a 3-game lead. And Tampa Bay, who is currently tied with the Yankees in the playoffs. I don't know where they'll be by the time you hear this. They're playing in the Yankees spring training facility, and they are going to be on the road for the majority of the second half of the season because you play outdoors in Tampa. And then you have the Seattle Mariners. These are the teams that the Red Sox are chasing. And as of this sentence, the Red Sox are the closest team that is out of the playoffs trying to climb into it. And those four teams, the Yankees, who for the last month and a half, this is not a slump, for the last month and a half have been playing as one of the worst teams in baseball. And they are, I think, the worst defensive team that is a playoff contender that I've ever seen in my life. Now, I got to phrase it like that. I'm not comparing them to last year's White Sox or the 2003 Tigers or some team like that just looked like, oh my God, have you ever played the game before? But for a team that has a winning record the second half of the season and currently is still a playoff team, I've never seen a team this incompetent defensively as the current Yankee team. We all know that the Rays are susceptible for a potential spiral if they're going to be on the road for so long. And the Blue Jays have to prove to me that they're a great team. And before I start anointing them as a brilliant squad. And then you have the Seattle Mariners, who, let's just be kind, have a recent history of, not winning down the stretch. These are the teams that the Red Sox are currently chasing. And is it out of line to say a team that's been playing like an incompetent squad for the last month and a half, a team that's playing in a minor league park that'll be on the road for the majority of the next bunch of weeks, that a team who just a couple weeks ago looked like they're about to pack up camp, and the Mariners, a squad that I'll believe they'll do something down the stretch when I see it. To think that two of those teams could collapse down the stretch, the Red Sox have to take a good long look in the mirror and say, all right, what's going on? They got to sing Four Non-Blondes. Is it Four Non-Blondes saying what's going on? Oh, I don't know. I think it's Four Non-Blondes. Is it three? The Non-Blondes. They sang what's going on. I got to make sure if I'm going to throw a cultural reference and I got it down. But either way, the Red Sox are looking up. And if Bregman comes back, all of a sudden they have another big bat in their lineup. They have an ace in Crochet. You look up and say, hey, if they get two, they don't even have to be ace pitchers, just two major league pitchers one in their rotation and one in their bullpen. Can they make up 3 games on one of those teams? I don't think that's I don't think that's saying a lot. That says a lot about the American League. And I'll get to that in an episode later because, again, the talk about a work stoppage is not about the players versus the owners. It's about the owners versus the Mets and the Dodgers. You have parity in the American League. There is no super team in the American League. If you're the Red Sox, you're looking up and going like, we have shot ourselves in the foot, been playing losing baseball, and we literally borderline DFA'd our marquee player, and we still have a shot. Now, when I say there's no super team in the American League, I have to be a little careful of how I phrase that, because there's one team that I think we're all overlooking, mainly because we're so used to them being there. The Astros are good again. And it's weird to say it that way because they won the division last year and the year before that. In fact, they've won the American League West every single year since 2017, with the exception of the COVID year. The A's won it that year. There's still going to be a lot of vitriol towards the Astros. And Astros fans, you're going to have to get used to that. And anytime you bring up the fact your team won multiple World Series, you're bringing it up too. You're bringing up the one that they won that nobody acknowledges. But they won one in 2022. They won the division last year. They nearly got back to the World Series in 2023. They nearly made 3 straight World Series appearances. Last year, they were 2 and out. It was a quick exit from the playoffs last year. But this year, well, they're good again. They are a team that when you look at the American League, as I just mentioned, the Yankees, the Mariners, the Blue Jays, the Rays are all fine but incredibly flawed. The Red Sox are poking their nose into it. Right now, the Detroit Tigers have the best record in the American League and, what probably should go in with a great sense of confidence. But don't count out the Houston Astros for a lot of reasons. Take a look at what they went into Los Angeles, okay? And at least for the first couple of days, they blew the doors off the dump. They blew the doors off the dump like someone was banging a trash can, except no one was banging a trash can because the game was being played in L.A. This was just they were beating a team they were beating a great team. And the Astros just smacked them around. And you take a look, Yainer Diaz got a big hit the other day. Christian Walker got a big hit the other day. Victor Caratini got a big hit the other day. They turned back the clock, and Lance McCullers Jr. pitched a terrific game. And Jose Altuve is back. Now Pena is hurt, but when he comes back, he's been having an all-star caliber season. And hopefully he can come back and be healthy. And I say hopefully, not that I'm rooting for the Astros, but I want our stars to be healthy. And he's been playing as if it's the 2022 postseason again. Hunter Brown is great. He leads the American League in earned run average. And with Framber Valdez, that's a great 1-2 punch. And Hader is finally pitching the way that Astro fans were hoping he would pitch when that weird trade came about from Milwaukee. On May 23rd, the Houston Astros were 26-25. Right around the first checkpoint of the season, they were one game above 500. Since then, they are 28-10. They have won 28 out of 38 games. With Valdez and Brown 1-2. And they'll probably win the division. I don't see Seattle passing them. And they will go into the postseason probably not having to play the wild card series, so they'll have a rested and ready Framber Valdez and Hunter Brown going 1-2, barring injury. Yes, I know Detroit is having a fabulous season, and they're probably going to be the number one seed in the American League. But we've seen number one seeds get knocked off. And this is a battle-tested Houston team with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder that they were eliminated so quickly last year. And now look at them. They could have a situation where they've lost Carlos Correa, they've lost Justin Verlander, they've lost Bregman, and maybe better. And I'm just looking up and saying, in this American League that has so much parity, that doesn't have a super squad, why wouldn't you go for the team that has postseason experiences and two aces at the top of their rotation and a dynamite closer, and if Pena is back, a guy who's been a postseason stud sitting in the middle of it? So, I talk about how the AL is wide open and everything like that. It would not stun me if we looked up and it was Houston again. And if Houston could patch a hole here or there, they don't need to make a big deal. That's for a team like Houston. You don't have to make a huge splash. You just have to get a complimentary part here or there so they have depth and a chance to rest some of their veterans down the stretch. This is a good team. And I think they've been overlooked because, the people are used to them being there, and they've been wanting to coronate another champion. And it's been a couple of years since they've been to the World Series, so there's this thought of, okay, maybe their peak has ended and they're sliding back down. This American League, flawed Yankee team that maybe a wild card team, a weird Blue Jays team that is up and down, a completely unpredictable Rays team, maybe a Red Sox team that overachieves, and a Tigers team who just a year ago were selling, or a team that's been in the playoffs every year. Don't count out, because the Houston Astros, they've been there. They've done that. And you know what? It would not stun me, and it shouldn't stun you if they're the team that's playing deep in October. Thank you so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB, this feed on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Talking about Bobby Jenks and his legacy, the Red Sox and their confusing fork in the road, and hey, maybe we're all underestimating the Houston Astros. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.